Star Ocean's Second Story R attempts to continue the high that Square has been on with these 2D, HD, 3D games. Does it succeed in adding another banger to the collection, or did this skeleton in their gaming dungeon deserve to be laid to rest? Hello and welcome to Switch Scheme, where I do reviews, news, and lists. Today we're taking a look at Star Ocean's Second Story R, taking a look at the game's story, gameplay, graphics, music and sound, and overall value. If you enjoy the content, drop a like and subscribe. If you have a game that you want to see in the future, let me know in the comments down below. Now that we got that out of the way, let's take a look at Star Ocean Second Story R. When I was younger, I never really played any of the Star Ocean games. If I recall correctly, only one of my friends had it for PlayStation, and whenever he played it, I often went back to my Game Boy to catch more Pokemon. The sci-fi storylines and aesthetics really didn't do it for me at the time. If and when I did have access to a PlayStation, I was playing Resident Evil 1 and 2, Siphon Filter, Final Fantasy IX, and a lot of Legend of Dragoon. What I'm trying to say here is that I'm missing a key piece of the overall puzzle for a lot of gamers who are going to consider picking up Second Story R: nostalgia. But that isn't to say that the idea is lost on me. I know that there's a very fervent fan base for Star Ocean, this one in particular. Out of the gate, my initial concern was that Square decided to do the sequel to the first game as a remake rather than starting with the original. This may be because of the limited Super Famicom only release of the original, but that theory fades away since the game was later ported to other systems in the West. Either way, keep in mind that Second Story R is technically the second game in the line. Playing the first game is not necessary to completely understanding the story, but some may want to refresh themselves before jumping in. The story of Star Ocean Second Story R, which we will now refer to as Second Story from this point on, is an interesting one, and it's kind of hard to really express how bonkers it is without giving away key details. The game starts by having you choose one of two characters, Claude or Reyna, and the choice is rather important as you'll see a different prologue play out depending on which one you choose. Claude's story sees him sent to another world through time travel and teleportation, landing in a forest full of monsters with the obvious goal of trying to find his way back home. If you choose to play as Reyna, you'll find out that she's already in the forest when Claude shows up. But why? Well, you'll have to play to find out, and honestly, so will I. The game is long, and by the time of this review I've only played through Claude's campaign, so I actually don't know her story yet, and that's a really exciting reason to go back and play it again. Beyond the prologue, you'll also be making key decisions along the way throughout the story, and these all culminate in one of the game's over 80 endings. Now let's keep it real though, these changes aren't all that different, but it does go a long way to provide a satisfying wrap-up, making all the decisions you've made pay off in the end. The main story of a character lost and trying to find his way home is a rather overdone trope, but I feel that this game handles it well enough to stand out on its own. The gameplay section of this review is about to be the longest. There are a lot of systems in Second Story, but don't be afraid of that. Gem Drop and Square actually made each one an engaging part of the game and story, and without feeling overbearing, some can actually be outright ignored if you want, beyond the tutorial that teaches you of said system. The game is an action RPG, so you'll be mashing the attack button quite a lot, and over time for me, it did start to get a tad repetitive. You take 4 characters into combat while controlling one of them, and you do your attack and specials. You can swap around as needed or make requests for things, such as healing spells if your health is running low. One of the aspects of the combat I really liked was the assist system. If you've ever played a fighting game, say Mortal Kombat, then you'll know what I'm talking about, where you can press a button to have a partner jump in, do an attack, and then hop back out. This game allows you to assign 4 characters to this function, each with their own battle effects. It helps to expand your combat options and strategy from the typical action JRPG hack and slash. Another system I really appreciated was the private action mode, where you disband the party and they basically become NPCs that you can engage with. You can get requests from them and work on relationships along the way. It adds a large number of side quests and things to do, and the best part about it is that it's not necessary. You can skip it if you want. Although I will point out that if you do decide to skip these storylines, you might miss some world building that is key to enjoying the story. Lastly, I want to discuss the skill system. Each character has a list of skills that you can upgrade to improve combat. You'll be gaining 2 types of points throughout the game to bolster these skills. One set of these points will come strictly from battles, and the other will come from jobs. And this adds another layer of choice throughout your play. You can be a chef and cook delicious meals, or you can be a musician and play beautiful songs. There are more choices, but I won't spoil them here, as it's honestly kind of cool finding out what crafting and job systems you can engage in. The best part of it all is rather than feeling secondary or a waste of time, you really do feel that your efforts are being paid off thanks to the way that the skill system works. Now, I've gushed a lot about the gameplay and all these systems, but it's not 100% perfect. My biggest complaint, honestly, is that the game is just too easy. The game feels like it's neutered at times in the challenge department, and by the end of the story you kind of toss strategy out the window, just mashing the main primary attack button because you're so strong you can crush all the opposition. It's not the worst complaint, and luckily there is a difficulty gauge that you can manipulate at any time to fine-tune the difficulty to your level of enjoyment. If you're coming into this game hoping for at least some sort of challenge, I would recommend skipping easy and normal and just skipping straight to hard. The music and sounds are a mixed bag to me. The music is typical Square orchestral brilliance and the sound effects hit exactly right. The issue for me is the voice acting. The English voice acting can be surprisingly hit or miss, and I couldn't help but finding myself laugh a few times at choice line delivery.
No sir, none of the wavelengths are showing any response. The field resembles a magnetic energy field somewhat, but its exact nature is still uncertain at the moment.
Use this to protect everyone if something happens.
I also would like to just note that regardless of what you name yourself, the characters in the voice acting will always call you by the character that you chose. So if you chose to play Claude but you named yourself Steven, they're still going to call you Claude, even though in the text it says Steven. Another issue I had was the god-awful repetitiveness of the combat. If you've ever played Xenoblade Chronicles, then you know what time it is. And this game, the number of times you'll hear the same voice line yelled over and over by your party will possibly drive you nuts, and soon, Rhine time won't seem so bad. Thankfully, most battles aren't that long, but I did find myself turning down the volume a lot during combat, just to turn it right back up afterward to enjoy the music. Square has found a style that they want to keep to. Is it overdone, and is it lazy? That's up to you to decide. There are three camps in this world: those who want the games to remain in their original 2D format, those who love these 2D, HD, 3D updates, and those who kind of wish that if they're gonna go through all the effort to give the game a new graphic system, why not just commit to a 3D world like Tales or Dragon Quest? And to be honest, I often find myself leaning towards the 2D, 3D the most. I just love the way it all comes together with the bright colors and magic effects, the sparks and blasts happening all over the screen. And to be honest, the characters are just charming. But I do agree that there will always be the question of what if? What if they committed to a full 3D remake? Would it lead to more engaging relationships with the characters because they're actual faces rather than a bunch of pixelated boxes? Who's to say? Is this 2D, 3D style just a cop-out to save on cost? Probably. But I'll tell you that I'm still on the 2D, 3D train and riding along happily. I had little to no issues with frame rate, even when combat saw particles flying all over the place. The backgrounds are rendered beautifully, and if I had to be nitpicky, I would say there is some small aliasing around rough edges, but it's not that noticeable. The value here is quite unprecedented. If you enjoy your first playthrough, I can promise that you will go again. If not to play another character, just to change a choice here and there or a party member along the way, knowing that it will result in a different ending, and that alone makes replays worth it. Now, keep in mind that a full story playthrough might take 30 to 40 hours, but if you decide to engage in a lot of the optional content, you could see a playthrough lasting 70 to 100 hours. So replays, although possible, they won't come easy if time is a concern. On a positive note though, the game never makes you feel like you've wasted that time. Everything you do adds to your party, relationships, or story, and it's truly appreciated. Games these days often have a habit of just wasting our time with arbitrary story beats for the sake of having a longer completion time. Overall, Star Ocean's Second Story R is a must-have for action JRPG fans. It sits by the other Square Switch games, strong and powerful in its own offerings. A long and great story, a company with tons of characters to meet and recruit, a plethora of systems to optionally engage in, and the potential to have any of the 80+ endings really proves that Square came to slay the competition once again in the JRPG market. Some of the choices with the English voice acting were choices, and the repetitive callouts in combat drove me nuts. The difficulty needed to be adjusted as normal was too much of a cakewalk. But by the time I completed my play of Second Story R, I wanted more. And I believe that any fan of JRPGs will want to add this instant classic to their shelf.